Sit back and relax, have some brandy, have a cigarette. You're listening to the fucking Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week I head down to Crystal Mountain Resort in Washington to talk to all the behind-the-scenes players, park builders, and athletes at the 22nd edition of Snowboarder Magazine's famed Superpark event. If you haven't heard of Superpark, think of it as an end-of-season celebration that includes the biggest and most creative features of the year. Park builders from Seven Springs, Diamond Peak, and Carinthia parks converge on Crystal, get hooked up with the latest and greatest snow-moving machines from Piston Bully, and then create 3 park masterpieces. It's one of those events that I've always wanted to attend, but I've never been able to make it. And oh yeah, I guess this is the first time I've ever been invited. Before we get into the show, I need to do a few things. First, I want to thank the folks at West Seattle's Pearl Extracts for the amazing tour. It was like a science field trip where I learned how oil is extracted from plant matter through expensive machinery. It was really cool to see. I also want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, subscribe to my podcast on whatever platform you listen to me on, and finally, I need to thank my sponsors who make this show happen. They are Evo, Stanley, Spy Optic, Rescue Water, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, it's time for the Superpark episode. A few weeks back, I was at Crystal Mountain to MC a Red Bull event, and while I was there, I met up with some folks that listened to the show. We went out and shredded for a bit, and I did my part at the event, and then we were shooting the shit, drinking some beers after the event. They asked me if I was going to be at Superpark, and I was like, well, I don't think so, but why do you ask? And then they mentioned that it was going to be at Crystal Mountain. Hearing this was mind-blowing to me based on some of Crystal's history. Crystal Mountain is known for being a lot of things. Arguably the best terrain in Washington, they've made a huge investment in snowmaking, and they are a winter paradise that is close to Seattle, but it's also a world away. But what Crystal has not been known for in recent years is big jumps and being the most welcoming for snowboarders. And while the first part of that statement you could say is a fact based on there haven't been many big park jumps over the years at Crystal, you may think that me saying Crystal wasn't that welcoming to snowboarders is more of an opinion. But there is some fact here. And before I get to what I consider to be the facts, I need to give you a little background on Crystal Mountain. Before Crystal was bought by Alterra last year, it was owned by John and Kim Kircher, and they owned it for about a year. Now, I don't know the Kirchers, but I do know that their family has a rich history in skiing and resorts. John's dad bought land in Michigan for $1 back in the 1940s, and he started Boyne Ski Resort. John was born into the Boyne Resorts family, and Boyne Resorts is a small player in the world of ski resorts, but it's been a player for a long time. Growing up, John worked at Boyne, and then he gets a gig as the general manager of Big Sky in the 80s. Eventually, he became the point person for the Boyne acquisition of Crystal Mountain in 1997, and he became the president and CEO of Crystal, and he holds that title for a long time. And for a lot of that time, he wants to buy Crystal outright from the family business. And during those years of wanting to buy Crystal, John's wife and Crystal Mountain ski patroller for 30 years, Kim Kircher, published a since-deleted internet post that set the snowboard world on fire. The post was titled, "The Trouble with Snowboarding." The title is the first part of the PR nightmare here. This is the owner of a mountain writing a blog post and calling it the trouble with 35% of my customer base. And when you read the article, which I will put into the show notes, the gist of it is that snowboarding's numbers are declining, and she's trying to justify the numbers by calling a snowboard an inefficient tool, and she ends her blog post with this. Perhaps snowboarding took off because it was easy to learn. The joke was always, if it were easy, it would be called snowboarding. Unlike snowboarding's next of kin, surfing and skateboarding, riding on snow is pretty forgiving, and there are no tips to cross, no difficult paddle outs to overcome. But I disagree with the easy theory. Snowboarding is a pain in the ass. All that strapping, unstrapping, crow hopping, crab walking takes away from the turning, carving, floating, and even jibbing that's supposed to make the sport fun. So maybe we should all just step back and watch snowboarding's slow decline without attempting CPR. Maybe we should just let snowboarding go. So this is the owner of a mountain alienating her customer base, and it makes no sense. Based on how she writes, I know Kim Kirchner is a smart, witty person. And while I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, maybe, just maybe, if Crystal Mountain was bringing in less snowboarders, it would be a lot easier for Boyne to part with them, as they wouldn't be bringing in as much revenue, and maybe they didn't need that piece of the puzzle as part of their mix. And I can see a letter like the one that Kim wrote impacting snowboarder visits, but that's me and my stupid conspiracy theory. But moving forward in this whole letter fiasco, Boyne eventually sells Crystal to John and Kim. John finally owns his own business instead of being part of the bigger Boyne family business. And with a little luck from the weather gods and the massive investment that he makes in snowmaking, he looks to be set to live the small town ski resort dream. John makes public statements of how he is so stoked to be a private business in a sea of corporate giants and consolidation. And then 1 year later, he sells Crystal to the Altera Mountain Company. The reason John gives is that with Stevens being bought by Vail, he doesn't see how Crystal can compete without the capital that Vail is bringing to Stevens. Altera is one of those big companies that is buying up resorts, and it seems like the lesser of two evils when you look at the big guys. So the future of Crystal is changing, and I will say that talking to some of the folks that live here and work here and the locals that ride here, they are embracing this change. And to tell you the truth, it's the first time that I've seen people stoked to see things go from a mom and pop to a corporate environment, but it seems to be working. And you know who's going to be appreciated more than ever? Snowboarders. And for Crystal to get Superpark, well, that's a bold statement. And speaking of bold statements, I ran into Russell Winfield when I got to the parking lot at Superpark. And Russell always has bold things to say. And when I asked him about Superpark coming to Crystal, here's what Russell had to share. Superpark 22 at Crystal Mountain.
I'm just happy that it's not raining.
Yeah, man, it's sunny and it looks like it's going to be like that for the rest of the week. But was it a surprise to either of you that it's here? Blue saying, Russell, you take this answer.
Well, with the reallocation of ownership away from the said skier Nazis who owned it, I think that what Crystal may be trying to do is say, hey, we think you guys are equal citizens in this alpine culture. I'm all for it.
Blue, any thoughts?
Blue's just happy to be here.
So Russell referring to them as Nazis, which is a little bit harsh. I mean, they were just being mean to snowboarders. They weren't really killing Jews. But that's Russell's take. Max von Marbaud, who happens to be the sales director for Mervyn and an all-around awesome guy and snowboard historian, has a different take on Crystal. You haven't come to this mountain in 20 years, and why?
So I came here in the early 90s for a Northwest Series half-pipe contest, and it was the worst half-pipe I'd ever ridden. Even in the early 90s, it was bad. And they had rules for leashes, and they basically hated us for even having a contest here. And then for 20-some-odd years, all I heard was bad vibes about this place. And whenever I would come, it just felt like this was a mountain that did not welcome snowboarding. They didn't want us here. They didn't appreciate us. The only thing they were willing to do is take our money. But the customers were mean, and the management was fascist. That is my opinion of the management here. They were fascist. They were elitist, and they were better than you, and you didn't deserve to be here. And about 3 years ago, I started coming up here on Fridays with some buddies of mine from Mervyn who were like, you know what, whatever the mountain is, we're here, and we're having a great time, and we love riding here. And Blair changed my opinion about this place. And then I was like, you know what, I don't care who the management is or what's going on here. I love riding here. It's fun to learn a new mountain, and the people that make this mountain great are the people that I'm riding with. And then this year, it felt like a ding-dong, the witch is dead, you know, that management turned over, and Altera just seems to have embraced snowboarding and done a complete 180. They invited Blair to have his event back here. It's a completely new Crystal Mountain to me. I've never been so happy to change my opinion about a place as I have about here.
And it's the epicenter of snowboarding this week.
It really is. And good on them for hosting Superpark. Brianna and the whole management group here, the marketing team, has been wonderful hosts to snowboarding now. And it's a breath of fresh air in the Northwest, and it's long overdue.
For me to really understand exactly what was going on here at Crystal Mountain, I figured I would talk to Brianna Stoutenberg from Crystal Mountain Marketing to figure out what's been going on. You are marketing with Crystal. You've been here how long?
I've been here for 5 years.
Okay.
Full time. Mm-hmm.
And over the 5 years that you've been here, I would say the resort has changed quite a bit. A few years back, there was a letter I'm sure you can remember. Kim Kircher, I believe is her name, who wrote it. They own the mountain. And it didn't say she didn't like snowboarding, but it was very slanted against snowboarding, it felt like. And to have Snowboarder Magazine come here and do Superpark here, it's a total 180 for the mountain. And what's happened lately?
You know, it's amazing turn of events. After that happened, you know, it's been rebuilding our trust in our community within snowboarding, and being able to host Superpark is just kind of like that. You're welcome. Like, come shred with us. We are snowboarders too. We love this mountain. We want to share this with you. And to be able to have Superpark here and see how these park builders are just looking at our terrain and building on our terrain, and the creativity that they're bringing to our slopes is amazing. So we're pretty stoked for this week to see what happens and to see all the riders just get to explore our mountain. And we hope that they come back and they bring that energy back with them.
And before Crystal was, I believe, private, it was like a Kircher family thing.
Yeah, so Boyne Resorts owned it for a while, and then the Kirchers bought it from Boyne. And then Altera bought Crystal in the fall of 2018.
And when a company like Altera buys you, it's probably scary because you don't know what's going to happen. You think your small mom and pop resort can change. But it looks like it's changed for the better. It's gotten more open-minded with a big company in there. And do a lot of people miss the Kircher family?
I would say that we're really excited for the new things that Altera is bringing to the table. We are really encouraged to keep the mountain true to its core and what us as locals and riders and skiers here like to do. And a lot of that is we like to have fun. We want to have fun events up here. And Altera and our president, Frank, is all behind us on that. It's just really opened the doors to opportunities of having a lot of fun up here and bringing new events.
So that's enough of the resort politics for now, but it's safe to say a lot of things have been changing at Crystal, and having Superpark is a big deal. It's Crystal Mountain making a statement and hosting an event that has defined park snowboarding for over 2 decades. This is an event that started in 1992 on the Blackcomb Glacier unofficially. There was an insane crew and a big photo shoot. It was pretty much shooting fish in a barrel. You had Jeff Brushy, Sean Kearns, Noah Selaznick, Sean Palmer, Jamie Lynn. I mean, it was a who's who of snowboarding. And not only was it a good time for all, it was a content machine for Snowboarder Magazine. The next year, they do something similar in Tahoe. They have Rankwit, Rippy, Billy Anderson, Cersei Wallace, Danny Way out, and create another amazing photo shoot with another set of phenomenal features. So Snowboarder had produced a killer event, and the riders wanted to see that every year. They started asking for it. And when I say they started asking for it, they started asking for something that they dubbed Superpark. And in 1997, Snowboarder Magazine creates a real Superpark and an event around it. It's one of those end-of-year events where you can really make a name for yourself. But more importantly, it's one of those events where a lot of like-minded people get together to push themselves in the day and let loose at night. Legends show up to check out what the kids are up to, the younger bucks are charging hard, and the seasoned pros are calculated. It's an important event every year, and having it at Crystal Mountain really means something considering where they've come from. So I'm pretty excited that arguably one of the most important events in snowboarding over the past 20 years is coming to Crystal Mountain. And for me, I need to get my invite to Superpark because this isn't one of those events where you can just go from what I know. So I emailed the Yoda of snowboarding, Pat Bridges, who's been on the podcast before, and asked him if I could come check out the event. An hour later, I have an invite to an event that I've always wanted to attend. I've seen so much coverage of Superpark over the years, and I want to see those features sessioned in person. I want to see a triple in person. So I packed up the vehicle and I headed off to Crystal. It's about a 2-hour drive from Seattle. Waze took me on a route that I don't normally take, and the views of Mount Rainier were incredible. And if you haven't seen Mount Rainier in person, get to Washington. The drive takes you through a town called Enumclaw, and I love bringing this town up, and I've done it so much over the years that saying that I beat a dead horse would be totally fitting in this situation. What you need to know about Enumclaw is that it is known for an infamous 2005 case that is too disgusting and wrong for me to talk about on this podcast or anywhere else, really. That said, Google it or look up the movie Zoo. Most likely you are not going to thank me later for that, but at this point I am going to jump into my first set of sponsors. And the first one up is Evo. And all winter I've been telling you that there is no better place to get your ski and snowboard gear. And that's true. The folks at Evo stores in Denver, Seattle, Portland, and Whistler live and breathe the sports they sell. And now that it's spring, it's time to think about your bike. And whether you need service or a brand new bike, Evo has you taken care of. They have the best brands, offer great service, and they know what they're talking about. If bike isn't your thing, Evo is also the best one-stop shop for surf and wake. If you can't make it to a store, Evo.com offers the best user experience in action sports, free shipping on orders of $50 or more, and a low price guarantee. You can find out all about the brands, the events, Evo trip, and a whole lot more over at Evo.com. My next sponsor is Rescue Water, and each week I tell you how Rescue Water is proactive recovery. But what does that mean to you? Well, think of it like this. If you're really tired, you skip the coffee and grab an energy drink. Well, if you really need to hydrate, like after you get off the hill, finish a workout, or get home from a big night, make the smart choice and drink a cold Rescue Water. It replaces electrolytes much better than your traditional sports drink. It's a difference I can feel. It works. Make it work for you by heading over to resqwater.com and save 20% on a 12 or 24 pack case with the code RESQWaterTPM. That's all one word. Rescue Water is also available on Amazon. Wrapping it up here is another iconic Seattle brand. They are the pioneers of retaining cold and heat. I'm talking about Stanley. Remember that green steel bottle that your grandpa took to the mountains? The one that kept his coffee hot all day long? Well, that's a Stanley. And since 1913, they have been the innovators in the world of keeping your beverages hot or cold. They continue to set the gold standard today, and fueling outdoor adventures from work to camp and beyond is what they are all about. You deserve the best, and Stanley is going to make that happen by giving you 20% off their products site-wide. To get the deal, head on over to stanley-pmi.com, pick out the products you want, and enter the code STANLEY20 at checkout. That's a capital S, all one word, and the number 20. So those are my sponsors. I pull up to Crystal to blue skies at 10:30 a.m. The mountain's been closed to the public for the past week, and 3 park crews have been working their asses off to create some of the biggest and most unique features of the year for some of the world's best riders to session. And I decided something that I needed to do for this podcast is talk to all the different park crews and figure out the work that goes into building a Superpark. I grabbed my Minecraft-inspired credentials and then bumped into Benny McGinnis of Carinthia Terrain Parks out of Mount Snow, Vermont. His story is interesting. He actually started working in terrain parks in Lake Tahoe, but he did what no one does. He moved back east to work at Mount Snow because he wanted to learn more about snowmaking, and here is what Benny had to say about the build here at Superpark.
So, Benny, you've been here all week. You came over from Vermont, I
Yeah,
believe?
we flew in on Saturday, drove up, got our bearings, met with Pat on Sunday, and us and Diamond Peak went out and scouted. And then Seven Springs showed up that evening, and then we went around in the Cats and kind of Rochambeaued and made the decision on where to build.
So it's not first come, first serve. Since you were up there first, you didn't get to pick it. It was fairness, Rochambeau style?
Yeah, definitely. It was a group effort. You know, we all know each other, worked together at various projects, and everybody knew what each other had to build, and so we kind of looked at the lay of the land and figured out what worked best for each team.
Is this just a labor of love, or does Snowboarder Mag say, hey, we're going to fly you out, we're going to put you up for a week, and it's like a week, all expenses paid, and you're working your ass off? Or is it something you're paying for out of pocket, and it's just an honor? How does it all work?
There's a little give and take.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question at all.
You know, Snowboarder calls us up, and we accept the challenge, and we come out here and, you know, figure it out together. Pat showed up the same day that I did, so he knew as much about the setup and our sleeping arrangements, you know, as we did coming into this thing. So we all had to kind of get together and figure it out and see what the resorts can afford and see what we feel that Snowboarder needs to put up.
How many people came out and how many hours do you think you put into the week of making this happen?
We were working 3 people, 12-hour shifts in Cats, and then we had 2 diggers.
12-hour shifts, so you're going 24/7?
24/7.
I went through the parks this morning. There's a lot of huge stuff, but what is the feature that you and your crew are most stoked about?
We were really excited about the downhill hip that we built. You know, you don't see those a lot. Pat brought it up and we started talking about it. And so we went for it, and we're pretty excited to see the feedback on that because that's not really a common feature. Hips are normally flat, and so we went with a downhill one. And then we've got a pretty signature step-over style jump at the bottom that came out really clean that we're stoked on as well.
And do you have any other builds like this, or is this one of a kind for you? Where there's no rules, make it as big as you want, do whatever you want as long as they work.
Yeah, this is about the only place that you find that. Carinthia is pretty lawless, you know, and we have a lot of freedom there.
But you can't kill customers.
No, definitely not. And I guess we can't here, huh?
Well, you can set it up where they can make that decision.
Right.
One last question. You've seen all the builds.
Yep.
These are all your friends.
Yep.
And sometimes there's a winner and a loser and a second place.
Right.
And if you had to judge the builds, I know it's all different features and it's hard to really do that, but I'm asking you to judge. And if someone had a gun to your head right now and said, who's the best, who's the worst, and the other person's number 2, who would that be?
Diamond Springs for sure.
They're the best?
They're the best.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. In my opinion, they, got really creative, got aggressive with their timeline and got right in there and built some really unique stuff. And then we've got kind of a top to bottom run going on and some unique features with some standard ones that came out really good and are riding really well. So I'd put a second, and then Seven Springs has their one classic, beautiful Superpark feature, but it's just one.
Now it is time for me to head up the lift and check out the builds for myself and find the other park crews so I can find out what they were thinking when they were building their features. When I get to the top of the lift, I look to my right and I see the Village Terrain Park build. The crew that built it is from Diamond Peak in North Lake, and I bumped into Chris Ramsey, who is one of their builders, and Chris's story is interesting because he actually worked at Seven Springs back in the day, but he moved out west to Tahoe, and he is now at Diamond Peak, and he gives us a little background on the Village Terrain Park.
What's the week been like building these features?
It's been crazy. The guys have been pushing around the clock. I do the hand crew side of things, so just long days shoveling and raking. But it's been cool. We got a strong team, and the other crews out here do as well. So it's been cool seeing everything take shape and really come together the last 2 days.
How many days have you been building?
We've been building for a week, 7 days.
So how many man hours do you think your team has put in since you started this?
Oh, man, we got 6 of us. We've been kind of running 12s and 12s around the clock. So we've been all week straight. So
a lot of hours. And when you're building features for an event like this, you know you're going to have some of the best riders in the world. And are you building some features with some people in mind, like they are going to send it on this feature?
Maybe not anyone particular, but we try to follow trends in snowboarding to know what's going on and different things like that. So we had some ideas from contests, and our builders had ideas they've been working on all season that wanted to showcase here. So it kind of comes together like that.
And what are the challenges building here in Washington? Because I know we get a lot of different weather all the time. What are the challenges that you guys experience this week?
Well, it's definitely springtime at one point, and today it's warm. Yesterday, you know, we got a fresh coat of snow on top of everything, so I had to dig it back out. So we really got to see all 4 of them while we're here.
And for the next week as Superpark's going on, your job is just going to be manicuring everything and make sure everything's pristine?
Yeah, we got the guys that are going to groom at night. We'll make sure the takeoffs are looking good and just keeping everything looking good for the week.
I blew it on that interview with Chris and didn't get all the information that I wanted, so I found Brendan from Village Terrain Park and got some more answers.
A couple things I didn't get to ask that I do want to know from the Village Terrain Park crew. First, who guinea pigs these jumps? When you spend a week building these things and you've got some of the best guys in the world coming out, I would think you want to test them. Who does that?
Actually, the riders. The riders test it out.
You're just going to trust everything that you guys know, and the riders are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, we just trust that we build it right the first time every time, and then it works, you know.
And at this point, you've had a chance to go through all the different parks here. And if you had to judge, and I'm having everyone say who they think is first, second, and third, in terms of build for a Superpark event, who do you think takes it?
You know, I can't really contest to that because the Seven Springs jump hasn't really happened yet, or has it?
I think there was going to be one, and I think it's now rescheduled for an early morning session, so it'll be a little bit faster.
Okay, I think that'll be a super fun feature. And then I really like our section here at the Village because we have 4 features, so it makes it real flowy and just super fun for everyone to have something to do all the way down. We've got some metal in the channel gap.
How many rails are here at Superpark this year?
It's like 1 rail.
All right, so you guys are the only ones to incorporate a rail, which I think is a thumbs up for you guys in that respect. But you're going to give Seven Springs the win, then you guys, and then Carinthia.
Sure, yeah.
All right, well,
Now it was time to talk to the crew from Seven Springs. They had arguably the biggest feature at Superpark. It was one of those classic huge features that I'm going to let them describe.
It's a 75-foot jump over a 28-foot tall quarter pipe.
and you guys, I'm guessing like the rest of everyone, were working 24/7 to build this.
We worked around the clock starting Monday morning and finished the next Monday morning.
Being at Seven Springs, I know the rope tow there takes you up to a park just like this here. How often do you guys get to build a park like this?
We actually get to do it a few times a year. We're lucky enough that, we have some pretty big shoots come our way. So, yeah, it's usually at least 2-3 times a year we build massive stuff.
And how the hell did that even happen, that people go to Seven Springs for big park shoots? Because that used to not happen. It was a family resort. It still is. But you guys are able to throw big events as well?
Danny Vogel.
All right, one word right there.
Danny's paved the way for it.
And when I look at a feature like you guys have, it hasn't been sessioned a ton this week. And does it bum you guys out as terrain park builders that the speed wasn't there and the quarter sits in the shade?
Yeah, of course, but today made up for it.
And today was the big session here?
Correct.
And anybody throw down that stood out to you guys?
Grant Giller.
Was he the one throwing dubs on this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was going big, huge style. Like, he had the speed dialed.
Can you tell me or him how to turn off the siren?
There's a little button on the dash with a beacon on it. You just have to hit that and then pop the key out. Just push the key straight down.
So Pat Bridge is getting the important information from Joe on how to turn off the siren. It's not rocket science with these piston bullies. They're pretty easy to work with. I'm saying that because they're a sponsor of it, not that I've ever been in one. But you have to up the ante in size, I would think, for progression, and people come here wanting to throw down. Do you guys think about the risk factor and like, hey, this is really big? Because I'm guessing you guys aren't the ones guinea pigging this, but that's me.
Yeah, I mean, it's Superpark, though. Like, you don't want to, I mean, oh my gosh. Wow.
If you build it right, they will come. They will come.
Yeah.
So after talking to the park builders and discussing politics around snowboarding, the rest of day one was all about lounging for me. I headed up the lift, cooler in hand, and posted up on top of the village park. I used my cooler as a chair, and pretty much all the riders were just getting there, high-fiving. People were stoked, but this is a week-long event, so it was all about figuring out your speed and your lines in the beginning and not pushing it too much too early. And then I looked over and I saw a dude with a real, weathered coon skin glued to his helmet, and I realized I had to talk to him. I'm just guessing you're a local legend here because you have a coon skin glued to your helmet. You're wearing an orange safety vest. And to tell you the truth, when you hit the jump last time, I would say you were the least qualified of all these pro riders out here to hit it. So it was entertaining to watch.
Oh, no.
What are you thinking about this second run on this jump that is probably one of the bigger things you've hit?
Well, it compares to the step up that I just did and the gap down below, but I think I'm actually probably just going to do the roller this time. I got to watch a few people hit the big one before I actually hit it.
But you're like, what, 50 years old?
I'll be 50 next year, yeah.
And everyone else here is 22.
I know. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you find yourself in the terrain park often?
Not often. A couple times a year, maybe, at the most. And then I keep right up with people, so...
Well, these are the biggest features you're going to see here at Crystal Mountain in a long time, so enjoy them, man.
Thanks.
While Morgan was somewhat questioning what he was doing up there, he was still stoked and sending it early. Another stoked person that morning was Sam Klein, complete with the full black ski mask. Sam was working on a huge gap at the top of the village terrain park when I caught up to him. So your third Superpark, and it's day one, like hour two for you. You've been hitting this huge transfer boat. What's the whole week about?
Hey, man, you just start going as fast as you can, get that ball rolling. All of a sudden, you're riding better than you ever have. It's a great thing.
And for you, it's more about the streets. So you come out here with a big crew, and it's a totally different vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm solo street mission. Now I got all the homies clapping and hooting.
This next hit, I heard you were talking to your filmer saying my team manager's down there.
Yeah,
so I'm
a little
go
bit of
big
pressure,
on this
dude. You don't even know. To the moon.
Well, you got it, man. Make it happen.
Here.
So at this point, it's about 2:30, clouds start moving in, and it's time for me to head back to Seattle and call day one on my first ever Superpark. And on Wednesday morning, I head back up to Crystal Mountain for day 3 of Superpark, but day 2 of Superpark for me. And when I get there, I head straight up the mountain and over to the Seven Springs feature, as a lot of the riders are starting to congregate by this gigantic feature that Seven Springs has built. And I'm going to see if the session's going to happen, but it's all going to depend on the speed. The in-run isn't that fast. And as I'm watching, I bump into Snowboarder Magazine photographer Mike Yoshida, another person who has been on the podcast, and we talk about what's been going on at Superpark.
When you're putting on an event like this in Washington, the weather has to be a huge concern. Now, we lucked out. We're going to have sun all week. I think there's some clouds the first 2 days. But as a photographer coming into this, are you concerned with being in Washington and weather?
Yeah, I mean, since I've worked with Snowboarder, it's been 3 Superparks, I believe we've had in the Northwest, 2 at Mount Bachelor and 1 at Mount Hood. And it's always a crapshoot as far as the weather that you're going to get. So weeks ahead of time, I was like checking the forecast and it was looking pretty grim actually. And then right at the last second, the switch flipped and it got nice. So this is one of the luckiest scenarios we've had in the Northwest as far as good weather almost every single day.
And for you as a photographer, this is like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, you invite the best riders in the world here, create the best features for them, and then all you have to do is push the trigger, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing team of photographers here, and so we pretty much have everything covered. The biggest thing is just to try and move around and diversify and make sure we're shooting different riders and different features, but that's pretty much all we need to do at this point.
And I know we're only on day 3 and we're early on day 3, but is there anybody that stands out early on?
Yeah, there's a handful of people that are definitely ripping. That little kid Valentino is impressive to me because he's only 14 and he's hit a couple things that nobody else has hit at Superpark. He's maybe one guy that stands out to me.
So always good talking to Mike Yoshida, and he had mentioned Valentino, who happened to be the next person I ran into.
Valentino, you have to be the youngest person here at Superpark, I would think. Is there anybody younger?
Not that I know of.
And how many times have you been at Superpark?
3. This is the 3rd.
So you were doing Superpark at 11?
10. 10 was my first year, yeah.
When you go to an event like that at 10 years old, is it like putting weights in your pocket so you can get speed for the jumps? I mean, how hard is it being a little guy like that?
Oh, well, that year I was sort of just looking at everything and seeing where the level was. I was hitting a few little things, but it was like making my boards as fast as they could go and doing whatever we could to go fast.
You're saying you're like 120 pounds now. It gets a little bit easier, and you're a kid with rubber bones compared to a lot of these people in their 20s, the dinosaurs that are here. But they look to you to hit these things first. I saw in the Diamond Peak jump on Monday, you were the first guy hitting that big wedge. And do people look to you as like, hey, man, you're going to be the guinea pig of these jumps? Or do you take it upon yourself to do that?
Yeah, I just try and be a guinea pig because I know, like, it gets you lots of respect, and that's what I sort of want. So I try to do that.
And the features are just enormous. Do you ever see a park build like this in Australia?
Never. No.
This is one of the bigger builds that you ever see is coming to Superpark?
This is actually one of the smaller ones, but it's so good that it's still like as good as the ones before.
And what features are you most stoked about here?
That big one, I don't know how big it is, but the Diamond Peak one. And hopefully this one will be on because this looks like it'll be really sick. And the Carinthia one down the bottom.
This is your classic ginormous Superpark feature. That'll be an amazing cover or spread. And we're seeing our first person hit it and deck right there.
Yeah, I don't know if the speed's going to be here. I'm worried,
All right, man. Well, good luck.
Valentino is the future of snowboarding, and the future of snowboarding is here now. At 14, he is blowing everyone's mind here at Superpark. But right now, he's trying to get speed for the Seven Springs jump, and it might not happen. While we're seeing if they're able to clear the jump, I figure I might as well talk to Valentino's dad to get his perspective on Valentino's career and Superpark.
So you're Valentino's dad.
Yep.
Your son has been destroying it since he's been like 12 years old. I mean, before that, but really on the global radar at 12. How crazy is that for a parent?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff, eh? Pretty fun too.
I mean, I look at you, you're sitting here supporting your son, smoking cigarettes out here. You've got a son who's a top athlete in the world. And what's your background?
I'm just a surfer from Australia.
Do you have a wife who's got amazing genes too? And you guys had a super kid?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, we just surf and we just have fun. So.
And when you come to a place like this, although you've seen super parks in the past, but are you just coming here stoked, wanting to see your kid send it? Or do you want to be reserved? Do you care? What are your thoughts as a dad?
Oh man, I just love being here and just watching all the crazy shit people are doing. And like, they're obviously all very calculated about what they do, and they run it in a pretty safe way, even though it's freaking huge.
Yeah. I mean, on Monday, we saw Valentino on that Diamond Peak setup hitting that huge jump that no one was even touching straight, and you're slingshotting him into that. So you're full, hey, we're going to make you go as big as possible, son.
Yeah, but I screwed up one time. I threw him into it and he's like, I don't need it. And he like landed at the bottom. So I sort of listened to his intel a bit more after that one. I just didn't want him to knuckle, you know?
Yeah. At an event like this, there's probably some fun going on at night. You're from Australia. I don't know if you drink Foster's Lager, but that's what we think about Australian beer here. But at night, I wouldn't think Valentino can be at the bars, but you can. Do you going out and sending it with all the guys?
No, not really, man. I take it pretty chilled and, you know, we wax up and make sure he gets a good rest because he's pretty busy during the day.
Yep. But you aren't as busy. We're sitting here in the sun.
So Valentino's dad at doing the responsible thing at night, and the session that was going to happen on the Seven Springs jump is not going to happen. The speed is not there. It sounds like there's going to be an early morning session set up by Pat Bridges, and everyone will partake in that. You could hear some of the riders groan when they heard it was an early morning session, but you need it to be hard and fast if you're going to be able to clear that huge table from Seven Springs. The rest of my day was spent heading from feature to feature and watching people just throw themselves. And it is so impressive when you get on a mountain with about 50 other riders, all at a pro level, and just seeing the tricks. It's like a video game. And there's legends there as well. I didn't see Travis Parker, but I heard he was there. I heard Jamie Lynn was there as well. I did run into one of my favorite people in snowboarding, Hana Beaman, as I was leaving Superpark for the day. And here's what Hana had to say.
How many of these have you been to?
Ooh, I don't know. Out of what? This is Superpark 22. I've been to probably a good 12. This might be 13. Lucky number 13.
Wow. And what do you think of the features of this one compared to others? Is it bigger, smaller?
I think the features are pretty well rounded. There's a massive one up top with a quarter pipe. There's some smaller, more like approachable ones. Like this one looks cool. That channel gap is small and looks super playful and fun. And then there's some super rad, whoopee, roller coastery, bank slalomy border cross runs going through the trees that are pretty awesome too. I actually ate crap on them yesterday. But yeah, it looks rad here. I'm not really hitting any of the big stuff because I'm a little out of practice at the moment, but
when I hear you say out of practice, when we talked last time, you were the queen of social media. Every time I looked, you had a post up and there was something going on about your life, and not as much anymore. What's going on?
I mean, it's come and go. I feel like my story games are more on point. The classic Instagram has kind of faded off for me, but I still do it every once in a while. But yeah, I find more joy in the story posts.
Things are winding down. This is kind of the end of the year, I would think. What's your summer going to be like?
Summer's going to be fun. We got another little shoot coming up in Mammoth with 686. That'll be fun. And then probably a lot of mountain biking, maybe a little camping, some surfing, hopefully. But yeah, this is winding down. I thought I was done maybe 2 weeks ago after the Vans High Standard up at Seymour, which was super fun, but kind of decided to come down to Superpark since it's somewhat local to the Beaman and come support these dudes and check it out and see some faces.
Yeah, crazy to have this in your backyard.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity to come down and check out Crystal Mountain because I haven't really gotten to check it out before. So this place looks awesome.
So the theme of the week is riders really excited to check out Crystal Mountain, and a lot of people who are here today haven't been here before. So pretty cool to see. And now it is time for me to head out on day 3 of Superpark, and I might as well jump into my second set of sponsors. And Spy Optic is celebrating its 25th anniversary. Yes, 25 years Spy has been crushing it with innovation and style. Based out of Southern California, SPY is a collective of athletes, artists, and product designers who live and breathe action sports. To celebrate this 25th anniversary, SPY is re-releasing the MC3, an ode to Jeremy McGrath's original MC sunglass. The Dirty Mo 2 is a sick update to Dale Jr.'s original Dirty Mo, and the Scoop 2 celebrating SPY's OG Scoop sunglass, which started it all. To get 20% off your SPY purchase, head on over to spyoptic.com, place your order, and then at checkout, enter the code TPM20, that's all one word. To find out more about the products and the brand, head on over to spyoptic.com. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing the Northwest's best beer since 2006, and they encourage everyone to go drink some of their beer outside. Why? Because 10 Barrel is all about the outside. They live and breathe the snow and bike lifestyle, and they support it with events, sponsored athletes, movie projects, and more. Next time you're at the store, pick up some 10 Barrel. And to find out more about the beer that supports action sports, the events, and their pubs, head on over to 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. And on Friday, I head up to Superpark for my last day. And I'm pretty psyched to find out what happened on the early morning shoot at the Seven Springs jump. This jump is the biggest feature at Superpark, and speed has been an issue. So the plan is to get up on the hill for a sunrise shoot, and hopefully the speed would be there for this jump. I caught up with Justin from Snowboarder Magazine to find out about how the early shoot went.
So the shoot the other day, you had like a 4 a.m. shoot, which fucking sucks if you're here and someone tells you get a call from Pat or an email saying, hey, the shoot's at 4 a.m. You have to really want it to go up there because there's some people that are going to sleep in, but tell me about that day.
So my name's Justin. I work at Snowboarder Mag. And yeah, I mean, I think the opposite. I think if you get a call from Pat and he's asking you, he's tapping you to come up there, I think that's a huge honor personally. And I think
I heard some groans from people. Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you.
I'm sure you did. I mean, I think a lot of the times that's an early wake up for a lot of people. But I think if you're really hungry and you're really willing to do it, then you're going to make it happen.
And it totally paid off this time. You guys got up there and got all the shots that you need on that jump, right?
Well, not exactly. I think speed was a little bit of an issue, and there was a headwind. It was definitely gnarly up there, but we had a couple people test it, and I think Benji Farrow tested it and didn't work out quite as well. So we went down to that transfer jump, and that actually looked awesome.
I saw some of the pictures and the clouds, the way they were dropping over the mountains really looked phenomenal. But one thing I do want to ask you about is when you come to a place like Superpark, you expect progressive features, and with progressive features comes a lot of risk, and there's a shit ton of risk here. I left here on Wednesday at about 2:30, and I was sitting for a long time on the Village Terrain Park, the second jump down after the first big one, yep. And a snow skater went off and fucking hurt himself pretty badly. Serious injury, and that's part of progression. How do you speak to that, being as someone who's organizing this event, knowing everybody signed the waiver so they can do whatever they want, but then shit like that happens and it's gotta kind of be gut-wrenching?
It's super unfortunate, and definitely, thinking about Rob for sure right now, and we hope he's gonna heal up soon. I don't have all the details on it, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, progression's tough, people get hurt trying new stuff and trying to push the limits, and that's just kind of part of it. You kind of know the risk, unfortunately, when you're doing that kind of thing. But yeah, we're definitely thinking about him, hoping he gets better soon.
How many riders do you think are invited to this event?
That's a good question. I don't know. This is actually my first Superpark on the Snowboarder Mag staff.
So that's the wrong answer.
I know. Invited, I don't know. I know that showed up. There's at least something like 300 people that are here currently.
That have the ability to hit the jumps. Maybe not have the ability, but have the wristband to hit the jumps.
That have the wristband to hit the jumps, yes. The ability is kind of up to them, and we encourage people to not hit stuff if they're not comfortable. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, we want to make sure that people are doing stuff that they're comfortable with. And if they're feeling it and they want to try something new, that's great. But if not, no pressure. Like, we definitely don't want to.
All right, number 66. It looks like my food's here. Thank you. You made the podcast. And it's charged that shit to the game with this kind of stuff because people are going to get hurt. You know that going in. And out of the 300 people here, how many injuries do you think you've had over the week of Superpark?
That I don't know.
All right. You can't comment, and you shouldn't comment.
So while the injury to Robbie is terrible, I don't notice a different vibe. It's Superpark, and while no one likes to see injuries, they are expected. And while that early morning session on the big jump didn't work out, Seven Springs decided to shave off part of its table, and a session started over the big jump for an hour or so. After that session, I had a chance to talk to one of the guys hitting the jump, Windham Miller.
The big Seven Springs feature earlier, they had to shave like 10 feet off of the feature, it seemed like, so people could hit it because no one could get speed for it. You were hitting it earlier. You hit a front flip on it and then went for a double. And what happened?
I just came up really short. I wasn't not going fast enough. I was the last person to drop. There was no one up there and it was really slow. And I just sent it anyway, but I got broke off.
What's the aftermath?
I dislocated my rib and popped my shoulder out. But it wasn't too bad. I'm still walking.
You're walking and it's the end of the season, so you should have a beer and try to mask that pain.
From there, I head back up to the Village Terrain Park to check out a session starting on the 95-footer. Pat Moore, Grant Giller, and Valentino are killing it. And while I was watching this, I bumped into a random rider, Melissa, and had to ask her about the lack of women at this event.
Melissa, you're the fifth girl I've seen here at Superpark. It's pretty crazy. Is it odd just looking in everywhere you look as dudes, or is that pretty much snowboarding?
That's pretty much snowboarding. I used to build parks in the early 2000s at Mammoth, and I was the only girl there doing that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's pretty typical. I mean, guys go bigger, guys go faster. There's amazing girls out there. There's also It's Tits going on this weekend.
There's so much going on. It's a crazy thing. You know, you've got It's Tits. There's Danny Davis's event, I think, going on right now.
There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of choices. So I know there was a lot of girls here earlier this week, too. You know, people come in and out.
Have you seen any standout girls so far?
I'm on the injury side, so I've just kind of been laying low. But I saw Hana hit some stuff, and she did really well. And I saw some girls I don't even know. I'm on the older side of things, and I don't know who everybody is out there now. There's a bunch of kids here that I've never seen in my life that are doing really, really crazy cool stuff and lots of progression, and met a lot of people here from all over the world, so it's been super cool.
And then the legends start to show up. First, I had the honor of speaking with a fellow tribesman and a snowboarder who is part of Superpark 1, Josh Rosen.
You were at the first Superpark. We are 22 years later, something like that. And difference in the features and the tricks you see riders throwing today compared to when you were at the first one.
Oh, man. Well, I was 18. I was thinking about that because I was watching a 14-year-old today pushing boundaries on the features and going bigger and further. And I realized that progression has gone in so many different places. So you got size of jumps, distance of gaps, but also age of the kids. And so I wonder if it has to do with, you know, people like me who are 40 who have had kids and who have grown, you know, have taught them the ways and they're doing it earlier, or they're just bathed in it at an earlier age.
Well, maybe you guys weren't that good.
I mean, we were living up to, at that point, you know, we had Mac Dog Films to show us what was up, and there were guys that were progressing. I mean, I think that's what Superpark is, right? It's progression. Every time you go to the park, the features dictate progression, right? Like they're going to be the bigger jump, like the Berserker, the first 100-foot jump that we hit and that sort of stuff. And you rocked up to it. Everyone rolled up and was like, no, you know, that's too big. Just no one can do it, but we made it work. So that's just progression.
At an event like this, is it you look at Berserker and then one person hits it, then you're all like, fuck it, we're going to do it too, and then a session starts around it?
That's how it happens. We all looked at it, and then it was a couple of us, and we just were like, all right, someone's got to just go. And I can't remember if it was me or Jesse Burtner, but someone hit it, and then someone better than us came up, and after the session started, hit it and got the backside three and then got the cover shot. And that's what these events are all about. It's watching your fellow shredders and getting psyched and then doing it yourself, or just watching progression happen. And this is not shy of that. Like, I only rode one day, but I walked up to the big jump on the other side, and it was like, yeah, that's the biggest feature I've ever seen, and would never have in a million years thought that that could be a thing 22 years ago. And kids are just hitting it, and one guy goes and another guy goes, and the 14-year-old wanted to hit it but didn't have the weight for it, couldn't, and it was just like, yeah, man, God, this is just, you know, still the same way it was 22 years ago. It's the same thing, you know, just bigger jumps and younger kids, and the stoke is the same, and that's what makes snowboarding so great.
After talking to Josh, I look over to my right and I bump into another legend, Peter Line.
You've been to a lot of Superparks, a lot of them where you had to perform. You really don't have to do shit today. You just have to be here, and people are stoked to see you. But are there some features here that have your name on them?
Yeah, I was up here yesterday and was sessioning a little tiny old man style tree tap thing, but the little QP over there looks kind of fun. I always like those, but there's a little icy takeoff and there's a hip with a kind of flat landing. So I have all these excuses where I'm not going to do anything. So,
you're allowed to have those excuses, man.
It's kind of perfect, yeah. So I try not to get hurt, and so that's the big mission out here today.
And what else is going on in Peter Line's life? What's a day in the life of Peter like these days?
Right now I have off, but usually I'm designing some outerwear for Jakain. Just finished up the 2021 line of it. It looks awesome. So I'm stoked people will be checking that out in a couple of years, but next year's line's going to be amazing too. Do a little promotion here, my stuff.
What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Yeah, what are Peter Line's hobbies?
I used to drink, but now I quit. So I didn't
completely.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's a major accomplishment.
Yeah. I retired from that. I could pretty much did a better career in drinking than I did in my snowboard career.
You were really good at drinking, but you were really good at snowboarding too. But what do you fill your time with now? What are your nights like? What's a Friday night like with Peter Line's world?
Do little fun side projects, hanging out with my girlfriend on the couch. Just keep it up, stay in the city. So there's a lot of fun things to do down there, hang out with friends, whatever.
Awesome to hear that Peter is sober. If you listen to our podcast, alcohol does seem to be one of those things that hurt Peter over the years. So it's cool to see him able to quit. What wasn't cool was to find out that Peter had hyperextended his elbow, and I found him at the bar later on drinking a non-alcoholic beer. Nice work, Peter. Now, I couldn't have a Superpark episode without talking to the ringleader of everything around this event. The man who runs the show is Pat Bridges, and Pat is an enigma. His appearance is not one of a hardcore snowboarder, but that's what Pat is. Pat Bridges is the heart and soul of Snowboarder Magazine, and at this event, when Pat calls a session, it happens. When Pat wants to test horse piss or urea on the snow to see if it'll make everything firm up, that happens. So I'm going to close this one out with Pat Bridges and find out what's going on with the event and also what's going on in snowboard media.
So Pat, you just farted on a 14-year-old, and from what I've seen here at Superpark this week, this 14-year-old, Valentino, you're looking to him as almost the guinea pig for all the jumping. I won't say guinea pig, but when sessions start, he's usually there.
It's a very democratic event, and I'm an equal opportunity promoter of an event. And if the riders are feeling it and the stuff's built right, then within reason. But if I have confidence in the rider and the rider has confidence in themselves, then why stand in the way of progression?
And speaking of progression, every year you have to up the ante, it seems like, on the jumps here. And when we come to an event like this, you've got Seven Springs, who built a huge feature, but a feature that really wasn't able to be sessioned probably as you envisioned. Is that just part of the game?
Well, no. I mean, there's a lot of different facets of how it's super. I mean, and Superpark's taken on a couple other different goals, so to speak. I mean, it's not just about building the biggest stuff, and obviously that's the stuff that gets most of the coverage, but it's about creating a situation where the terrain is maintained in a super fashion. It is actually the gnarliest maintenance situation in the world of snowboarding, in that we have hundreds of riders lapping for 8 to 10 hours a day in 60, 70 degree conditions with the sun and a lot of slush. So maintenance is an emphasis, and that's arguably one of the ways that this event is the most super. But it's also about having it be super fun. There's a lot of lappable features that people can warm up on or just party lap with their friends. But sometimes, best laid plans don't work out. I mean, right now we have a wonderful venue here at Crystal Mountain, and it's all about context. We have an opportunity to bring the tribe to a mountain that they've never been to before and expose a culture and a community to the locals and to the mountain here that they haven't necessarily spoken to as of late. And of course, this is what I like to call the Ender Sender, and it's where we get everybody, together to, lap and have fun. I mean, it's pretty partisan these days between contest kids, film kids, and even within that, you've got your national teams, and they don't really intermingle that much. And then you got your film crews. So a lot of these people ride with 4 or 5 of the same people all year. So it's an opportunity for everybody to get together and catch up and see how the season was and celebrate another good year in the books. So, I mean, it's an Ender Sender. It's a progressive event. I mean, this is the event where the first bowl ever created with a Zog pipe cutting machine happened years ago at Mammoth. You see step over jumps, like the full realization of David Benedict's gap session vision happened at Superpark. And then there's an evolution of certain maintenance and aspects that we've become attuned to at Superpark that have spread to other events. It's hard to nail down exactly what the one objective is of Superpark because it's multifaceted, like I said.
And when you say other events, this year it seems like there's a bunch of different events that kind of conflict with Superpark. I think Danny Davis has one. We've got It's Tits. Does that take away from some of the talent that would normally be here?
Well, I mean, it does cause some attrition, but it's interesting too because you look at it from a standpoint almost in all of action sports, certainly, or all of sports, is Superpark created a unique trajectory of being able to get people together without it being a contest environment, without the contest bibs being on, without there being judges at the bottom of the run, without you having to put on a bib and somebody telling you drop now, you're going to get 3 runs to show your purpose for being here. This is a very organic, open-ended event. It's arguable that there wouldn't be a Peace Park and there wouldn't be a Red Bull Recharge or any of those type of events where it's not necessarily a cut and dry contest. It's about the gathering. It's about feeding progression off of a group of riders, sharing the slope, sharing the features. So, I mean, it's what we rock. That's the format we created with Superpark, and it's flattering that other people have taken it to the levels that they have, as far as Red Bull or Mountain Dew or Woodward and Powder Corp. But, you only have so many days in the year, and you only have so many windows of opportunity with certain resorts. So, I mean, it's bound to create a bottleneck here and there. But, we have amazing talent. We have 3 riders here at Superpark 23 that were at Superpark 1. We have Travis Parker, Peter Line, Josh Rosen. I mean, we got Pat Moore, Bodie Merrill, and we've got Eric Leon. We've got, Olympic medalists like Kyle Mack up in the mix, and then we have, young Valentino from Australia won the U.S. Open Junior Jam. He's 14. And yeah, I mean, it's a really eclectic gathering, but we all share the common love of snowboarding, standing sideways and having fun as we send it.
Okay, and I'll ask you one question that I don't even know if you can comment on, but Transworld shut down, snowboarders going. What does that mean to you as just a snowboard historian and someone who's been in the industry forever to see one of the giants taken down?
Well, I mean, people wouldn't realize this, but I mean, my first feature story byline was in Transworld in 1998. So it's like that's part of my pedigree as well. And that's, that was a tough turn of events. Ultimately, Snowboarder Magazine, though, has been the magazine that I've been a part of the masthead for over 20 years, full-time for 19. So, yeah, I mean, Snowboarder Magazine's got a lot of good opportunities moving forward and stuff. And as unfortunate as the circumstances with Transworld were, Snowboarder is going strong, and we have Superpark. We brought Biz Superpark back this year. We're releasing 4 movies in the fall. So rather than looking in the rearview mirror, it's about pushing forward and seeing how we can keep speaking to our audience in a way that stokes them out on snowboarding and creates the conversation amongst the community and feeds it.
Well, I had to ask because inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, well, we sold the National Enquirer 2 weeks ago.
So that was my first time at Superpark, and it did not disappoint. The one thing I didn't do is stay late into the night for the after party. So I didn't get to find out who the MVP was, and I didn't even bother to find out after the fact. I'll check that out this week with all the coverage that should be coming on snowboarder.com. If I had to choose an MVP, it would be either Grant Gillis, Valentino, or Robbie. These guys went huge all week, and I'm sure there were plenty more folks who did, but I didn't see all of them. There was so much going on at this event that I'm sure I only caught about 30% of it. One thing I do know is that seeing features like this in person changes your perspective on things. The jumps are massive, and the talent level is off the charts, and it could be even higher in the future. Hopefully, one day, all the big end-of-season snowboard events can work together with each other in planning so the best riders can be at all of the events. Regardless, Superpark 22 was quite a show and content machine. I really want to thank you for listening, and thank Snowboarder Magazine, Crystal Mountain, Red Bull, and Piston Bully for putting on such an amazing event. And finally, I want to thank my sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Evo, Rescue Water, Stanley, Spy Optic, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.